This is David Stripmatter, professor of history at Ohio Northern University, conducting an interview for the Kent State Guardsman Oral History Project. Today is Friday, March 20th, 2020, and I have on the phone a guest here. So what is your name and where are you from?
I am Jeffrey Jones. I live currently in Worcester, Ohio, 69 years old.
And how long and in what capacity did you serve in the Ohio Army National Guard?
Well, I joined the Guard when I was still in high school, actually, at 18 years old. Served for 6 years in the Worcester Armory, which at that time was an infantry army, infantry battalion.
And what led you to join the National Guard?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I was still in high school my senior year. I was currently dating a girl whose older sister had either a boyfriend or a husband at that time, I don't quite remember, which was also in the Guard. So, being young and naive as I was, I thought that would be cool if I did it too, maybe to impress her, I don't know, but that's why I got into the Guard originally.
And looking back, how do you view your time in the Ohio National Guard?
Well, I can say my time in the Guard was actually the start of something that opened my eyes to ways of the world, how people think, how people act, how they react, different opinions, so on. And that's been a learning process for me to this very day.
How was it that you were deployed to Kent in May of 1970?
Well, as I recall, we were already activated on a truck strike. We were based in Akron, Ohio. We actually slept in the old Rubber Bowl Stadium in Akron, Ohio. And we were there for a few days. I can't recall the exact amount of time when we were then called straight from there to Kent State.
And what was the mood in Kent when you arrived?
Well, when we arrived, I guess you could say tensions were very high. There was, I guess, the protesters had already created a tremendous amount of damage in town, and the burning of the ROTC building, so on and so forth. So it, to me, I guess it was just, I don't know how I could describe what I was feeling at that time, but it was just something I'd never seen before. I don't know if amazing is the proper word for it, but
what are your memories of the morning of May 4th?
Morning of May 4th. Well, if I recall right, we arrived at day before or 2 days before. But on May 4th, we got up, and I guess there was a time set by the protesters where they wanted to be there. They wanted everybody, that they could get possibly to be there. And, like we were aware of that time, so they had us assembled in an area, and I guess it was just before a place that I guess they call Blanket Hill. And I don't recall that from the time I remember reading about that, but we were assembled there in the morning.
And then, as things proceeded throughout the day, what are your recollections for the rest of the day?
Well, I can't remember the times, but at some point they started, somebody over the bullhorn started warning them that they were warning the protesters that they were breaking the law. They needed to disperse, so on and so forth. This went on for a little while. Don't know quite how long, which the protesters were not responding to. So at some point, we were given the order to disperse the crowd. And the way we were doing that was we were all on a big long line there. We started proceeding up the hill. We had a few of our Guards members were carrying 79, AR-79 grenade launchers is what we call them, I guess. And they were firing tear gas rounds into the crowd, trying to help disperse them. We had our gas masks on, and we had our M1 rifles. We had bayonets affixed to the rifles, and we started up the hill, more or less pushing the crowd back. Didn't seem to be dispersing very well. The tear gas helped us quite a bit. Some of them would pick up the canisters and throw back at us. But we moved on up the hill, over the other side of the hill, until we got to a place. They say there was some sort of practice football field there. I don't recall that, but we got to a place where we ran out of tear gas. And shortly after we ran out of tear gas, the protesters realized that we didn't have any more, and we'd stop shooting. Or stop shooting the tear gas. So they got a little braver, I guess, and they started proceeding toward us. And there was quite a few more of them than they were of us. So we were given the order to retreat back, start retreating back down the hill. And the protesters started getting closer as we were retreating. I think we reached somewhere around the top of the hill. And the protesters seemed to be, they were a lot closer than they were at first, and kept getting closer to us. And I am sure that probably everybody on that line was scared uh, as to what was going to happen. Now, there were reports, and I don't recall, but there were reports that some turned around and fired their weapon. There were other reports that everybody had turned down and got down on one knee. I don't recall how that happened. You know, whether we were on a knee or just some of us just turned. And then there was, and I myself don't know why the shooting started at that point. I don't know if somebody just got panicked enough to start shooting. There were some saying that they heard an order to shoot. And I never did hear if they ever determined what started it. To me, I never fired any rounds myself. It was pretty much over with before I realized what was going on. But then we, after we fired rounds, then they stopped their proceeding. You know, their protesting at that point. You know, and I guess they dispersed, running and whatever. So we then proceeded on back down the hill to where we originally started, and we stayed down there. Then they, at some point, they had ambulances coming in to take care of the wounded. And I do remember the State Highway Patrol going into the crowd then, because the crowd was just kind of lingering there in front of us. They were starting to build their courage up again. And the State Highway Patrol, they built a human circle for a detention area where the other guards would go into the crowd, grab protesters, and then they would put them in that circle. And eventually, I guess, they arrested them and took them away. Then later the crowd had enough courage that they thought, I guess their thinking was they was going to come down and teach us a lesson. So they started down at us again, where we were then given an order to aim over their heads, but not to fire, which we did. And when they seen that, why then they decided that it was not in their best interest to continue on, and they stopped. Now, after that point, I don't recall a whole lot, you know, the rest of the day. At some point, either that night or the next day, we heard, or it might have been a day or two after that we were there, I'm not sure, we heard that the gang called Hell's Angels, the motorcycle riders, were headed our way with the idea that they were going to teach the National Guard a lesson. So we, I guess we actually, if I remember right, we actually filled sandbags and stuff and made kind of barriers, you know, that we could lay down behind in case it got to that point where the Hells Angels did show up. But they never did. I did hear that the Highway Patrol was able to convince them to do something else. So they never did show up. Now, after that, I don't remember a whole lot about what else went on.
Do you recall if the National Guard issued any sort of instructions to its members in the days after the events at Kent State?
They may have. I don't recall. It seems likely, but I don't recall for sure that they didn't want us talking to anybody, because we did have to go through a number of investigations. I think I don't remember exactly how many investigations I had to go through where they called us in personally and asked us questions. I know there was a state highway patrol investigation, an FBI. I think there was one or two more maybe that I had to participate in. And it seems likely, I can't recall for sure, it seems likely they didn't want us talking to anybody other than those investigators, at least for a while. And if they issued any orders, for how long or what have you, I don't recall that either.
Do you recall following the trials that followed the Kent State shootings?
I didn't really follow it per se. I believe I had heard just a tidbit of information here and there about it. I guess I wanted to distance myself from that as far as I could. I didn't talk to anybody about it really, other than close family members that knew I was there, because the attitude toward the guards by so many, I would say most, it was so negative that I just didn't want to get into those types of conversations or put myself into that type of scenario where, people were voicing their opinions at me or whatever it was going to happen. So for the longest time, I never even told anybody I was there. I mean, I don't know, it could have been 20 or 30 years after the fact before I even started, talking about it with other people. It's just that I guess I didn't want to go through that kind of a situation.
How have your feelings about the episode at Kent State changed over the years?
I don't know if it has changed a whole lot. My feelings. There is a belief I have, and I have had probably since the shooting, and I haven't told many people, but I think had the shooting not occurred, and everything else being the same, I think there's a great possibility that more people could have been killed or injured, including, a number of guardsmen along with them. More protesters and guardsmen could have been killed or wounded. Now, the reason I say that is I did mention that we had bayonets affixed to our rifles. Had the protesters gotten close enough to us where instead of shooting, we might have thought it necessary to protect our lives by using the bayonets, it's hard to say what would have happened, how many could have been injured, killed, so on and so forth. It could have been, I believe it could have been a lot worse had the right things come into play. But as far as changing my opinion hasn't really changed. My feelings haven't changed that much that I can recall anyway over the years.
Did you keep any mementos, so to speak, from your deployment to Kent?
I'm sorry, any mementos from...
any artifacts or newspaper clippings or, uniform
Yeah.
or anything from the time in the Guard?
Well, we all kept our uniforms. Of course, or did we? That's a good question. I thought I had my uniforms, but I didn't keep them for any certain reason. If I did, I don't remember if we had to turn them back in or not. It seemed to me, well, I know there was some that we had, 'cause we had to wear them home, when we were done. But no, I didn't keep anything. That was a time and place that I really didn't want to remember. So I didn't keep anything.
Are you still in touch with any of the other Guardsmen that you served with?
I haven't been in touch. I mean, Mac McManus, I think he was my sergeant, platoon leader maybe. Him and I were neighbors for a while, but I haven't seen him for probably 16 to 20 years now. There was a few other guys, like 3 other guys that I went to school with joined the Guard, but 2 of them I don't think might have been at Kent State. I think he might have joined afterwards. And then the other one, I'm not sure if he was even at Kent State, but no, I haven't kept in touch, since about 18, 20 years ago, I guess.
Have you ever returned to the Kent State campus?
Well, I don't recall driving my car up there, but I was a truck driver for over 30 years. There's been numerous times that I've been in the Kent area, delivering goods, and I would drive by the campus and so on and so forth. Never really got out to look or anything, but I've been up there by it, in other capacities.
How often have you spoken about the Kent State events to historians or reporters, for example?
Well, I've been trying to think, and I'm not sure anybody. I know not recently, not within the past 20 years. I can't recall anybody, reaching out to me, wanting to speak about it. Other than, some people that knew I was there may ask a question now and then, but no historians or anything that they wanted to, or anybody that wanted to publish anything.
Do you think that the narrative or the kind of the popular conception of the Kent State shootings has been fair to the National Guard?
That's a good question. I guess there's some that have tried to be. Clearly, there's others that seem to have a biased opinion about what happened. Some of the articles online here that I've been reading, it seems like some of them try to get it as accurate as they can, but others that I've read seem like they was pretty far off as from what I experienced up there.
Are there any questions that I have not asked there any comments that you would like to share in regards to the Kent State shootings of May 1970?
Well, there's, as I've learned in life, there are certain things that comes up that you just can't prepare for because you have no idea that they're going to happen. Just like today in the coronavirus, this is something that nobody probably, or very few, imagined would ever happen. Kind of caught the world by surprise. The same way with the Kent State shootings, I guess. That was something that, as far as I know, had never happened before in that way. And I don't think anybody imagined in their wildest dreams that something like that could happen. Since that happened, though, there's been a lot of changes made, a lot of training going on. I know that in the time after the shooting around the country, we did, I know, and I'm pretty sure it was around the country, National Guard units went through training for situations like that. They developed techniques and protocol for stuff like that. We went through the training, and it certainly helped. Now, I don't know if anybody's had to use that training since then, but to me, that event was something that I don't think anybody would have been prepared for, especially us. I was only 19 years old at the time, so life happens. We can try and prevent all the bad we can, but we're not going to prevent it all. And life happens, and there are consequences from that thing happening. Other than that, I don't know what else I could add to that. You say it's 50 years ago that event was, and it's even, I can't remember all the details anymore, just a few of the things that'll probably stick with me. But I think I've already mentioned most all of them.